Have you ever felt like someone was quietly rewriting your reality, one smile, one subtle insult at a time? The kind of person who feeds on admiration, twists every truth, and walks like they're untouchable. That's no accident. Narcissists thrive not because they're powerful, but because they've convinced you they are. But what if you could undo that illusion, not with rage, but with restraint? What if the key to power wasn't to confront, but to become unreadable? Stay with me. In this video, we're going to explore how silence becomes your sharpest weapon. Law 1. Master emotional invisibility. You will never defeat a narcissist by engaging them, not through arguments, not through pleas for fairness, not even through truth, because narcissists don't want truth. They want worship. They don't seek connection. They seek reflection. They crave an echo of their illusion, not a mirror of reality. So when you stop reflecting their fantasy, when you become still and unreadable, something remarkable happens. They begin to fracture, not from outside pressure, but from the absence of the very thing they feed on your reaction. To truly overcome such a person, you must become emotionally invisible, not cold in the sense of cruelty, but cold like still water, undisturbed, unyielding, quietly deep. This is the Stoic way, to remain unmoved, not because you lack heart, but because you have mastered it. The less you offer in response, the less explanation, justification, or validation, the more they begin to writhe. They are not tormented by hatred. They are tormented by irrelevance, and nothing is more irrelevant to them than a soul they can no longer manipulate. Kindness is not a weakness, but to the narcissist it appears so. They see gentleness and mistake it for softness. They see empathy and interpret it as permission. And this is where your clarity must emerge. You do not owe them explanation. You do not owe them redemption. Every time you explain yourself, you give them leverage. Every time you react, you hand over control. Even when you try to expose them, you play into their game, because they don't fear being unmasked. They fear losing the spotlight, and your outrage only keeps the stage lit. Machiavelli did not say confront power. He said reframe perception. You do not pull the tyrant from the throne by force. You make him appear foolish, irrelevant, forgotten. This is strategy. This is discipline. Let them believe they've won, while you quietly remove the audience. Your silence will speak louder than any revelation ever could. The narcissist will try to bait you first with guilt, then with shame, finally with nostalgia disguised as remorse. They'll offer half confessions, ambiguous apologies, and calculated tears. Do not fall for it. What you're seeing is not repentance. It's a performance designed to pull you back into their arena. The Stoics taught, do not chase what is not in your control. And a narcissist's heart, if it exists at all, is not something you can heal. That wound they show you, it is not a doorway to their soul. It is a snare dressed as vulnerability. And once you step in, they reset the trap. You must remain unreadable, not because you're empty, but because you have chosen stillness over spectacle. No reaction, no protest, no fuel, just silence. Narcissists thrive in chaos because chaos gives them a stage. But if you want to win, you give them nothing, not drama, not tears, not even clarity, only presence, only composure. You become the mirror they can no longer recognize, the one that doesn't reflect their fantasy back to them. And when they lash out, when they escalate, that is not your cue to respond. That is your test. If you flinch, they regain control. If you remain unmoved, they spiral deeper into their own unraveling. You do not need revenge. You need absence. You do not need justice. You need distance. Justice, in its truest Stoic form, is letting the disordered mind collapse under its own weight. You don't push them off the cliff. You simply stop holding them back from falling. Remember, the narcissist plays not with logic, but with perception. They do not seek truth. They seek control, and control is only possible when you grant them access to your emotions. So you deny them that, speak rarely, and when you do, speak in facts, not feeling. Offer no tone, no urgency, no emotional undertone. Let every word be a blade, not of anger, but of exactness. You are not there to strike. You are there to cut away illusion. When they finally reveal their true self, when the mask falls, do not celebrate, document, observe, prepare, because the narcissist will not announce their downfall. They do not collapse in public. They decay in silence, and if you've played your role correctly, you will witness it not as a participant, but as a quiet observer. That is what true power looks like, not dominance, but detachment, not revenge, but restraint. This is not about outshouting them, it's about outlasting them. Narcissists burn like dry wood, bright, fast, dramatic, but they leave only smoke and ash. You must be the cold flame that never wavers, controlled, focused, silent. And when they realize they cannot draw a reaction from you, when they see you cannot be bent, not even through guilt or rage, they will do what they always feared, face themselves. Without you to perform for, they crumble. And you didn't destroy them. You didn't need to. You simply stepped aside and let gravity finish what pride began. That is the Machiavellian way. That is the Stoic path. Not to fight noise with noise, but to respond with silence so still, so complete, that it becomes undeniable. You don't become colder, you become clearer, because when the storm rages and you remain unshaken, the world sees who holds true power, and that power is no longer in their hands, it's in yours. Law 2. Wield silence as power. The narcissist floods the room with words not to connect, but to conquer. Their voice is not conversation, it's invasion. They speak not to share, but to control. Each phrase a baited hook, each smile a distraction, each argument a trap disguised as dialogue. They want you to bite, to explain, to react, because every time you do, you confirm something for them, that they still own your attention, that they still live rent-free in your mind. And in their world, attention is power. But here is the Stoic counter, an art far more devastating than any retort: strategic silence. Not silence as surrender, but silence as strategy. Silence that cuts deeper than any scream. Silence that doesn't retreat but observes. In the face of manipulation, silence is not absence, it is presence, refined, it is control, focused. When you stop responding, you don't disappear, you transform. You become a mirror the narcissist cannot distort, a surface so still, so unyielding, it reflects them back to themselves. And that's what they fear most, the confrontation of their own emptiness. Stoic silence is not withdrawal. It is an active refusal to be pulled into the chaos. It is the decision to preserve your energy, your reason, your inner command. Because narcissists don't seek truth. They seek your reaction. They poke not to understand, but to provoke. Every argument is a performance. Every guilt trip is a move on their board. So you do the unthinkable, you step off the board. You take the air out of their drama. You offer no defense, no emotion, no applause. And in doing so, you collapse their theater. Yes, they will push harder. They will accuse you of being cold, unloving, selfish. Let them. To a person intoxicated by their own ego, silence feels like cruelty. But you are not here to ease their discomfort. You are here to reclaim your clarity, and stillness is how you sharpen it. Strategic silence is not weakness. It is discipline in its highest form. It is self-command. It is what Marcus Aurelius practiced in court, what Epictetus taught his students. You do not need to correct every lie. Let falsehood collapse under the weight of its own contradiction. You do not need to respond to every insult. Let it echo unanswered until its power fades. You are not their defender. You are not their audience. You are the one who walked away without slamming the door. When a narcissist cannot provoke you, they lose direction. They begin to flail, to overreach, to unravel. And that's when you watch not with spite, but with detachment. Let their ego stumble in the void your silence creates. Because you've taken initiative without speaking, you've seized control without lifting a hand. This is stoic warfare, not through force, but through refusal. They will attempt to bait you. They'll show wounds they never had, whisper apologies they don't mean, offer connection they don't believe in. It is always the same play. Tug at your empathy until your boundaries dissolve. But now you see clearly. You've learned their regrets are tactics. Their vulnerability is performance. And your silence is not punishment. It is protection. Each unspoken word builds a wall they cannot climb. But this silence must be rooted in understanding, not in resentment. The Stoic does not go quiet out of spite. He goes quiet because he no longer seeks to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding, because some games are only won by refusing to play. And when you fall silent, not in anger, but in wisdom, you make them face the thing they've spent a lifetime running from themselves. Their desperation will grow. They'll raise their voice, stretch their lies, falsify their innocence, but all of it becomes noise because now you no longer rise to meet it. You stand still, and that stillness, that immovable posture, is what terrifies them, because in a world obsessed with dominance through words, control through chaos, and validation through conflict, stillness is the one force they cannot master. Understand this. You are not silent because you are weak. You are silent because you are free. You do not need to explain. You do not need to prove. You are anchored in something deeper now, your own judgment, your own reason, your own peace. You've stepped outside their storm, and now you watch it pass from the calm of your own clarity. Silence, when wielded with intention, becomes a blade sharper than speech. Every moment you say nothing, you say, "You no longer shape my reality." That is the message they cannot bear, and that is the freedom they cannot destroy. This is not cruelty. This is correction, not revenge. Release, not power over them. Power returned to you. The more you master the art of strategic silence, the more you will see it. Their chaos dims. Your vision sharpens. Their performance unravels. Your presence steadies. Their illusion breaks, and your clarity begins. So let them shout. Let them manipulate. Let them perform. You remain unshaken, stoic, present. You don't need to speak to be powerful. You only need to stop reacting, because in a world that feeds on attention, the greatest rebellion, the truest form of control, is silence. And once you understand that, you become untouchable. Law 3. Let ego blind them. If you wish to dismantle a narcissist without raising your voice or breaking your calm, don't strike seduce, not with affection, but with perception. The surest way to neutralize someone who thrives on appearances is to let them believe the illusion they've built is working. A narcissist craves superiority the way a starving man craves food. They will swallow flattery even when it's poisoned with strategy. That is your leverage. Let them drink deeply from the cup of false admiration, because nothing clouds judgment like unchecked pride. This is the Stoic paradox. The path to power often looks like surrender. The wise man does not confront arrogance directly, because arrogance is deaf to truth. Instead, he lets it grow. He lets it inflate, because what swells without foundation always collapses under its own weight. And the narcissist, by nature, cannot resist overgrowth. So you nod, you observe, you give them the applause they think they deserve, not because they've earned it, but because you're shaping the stage on which they'll eventually fall. They want to be worshipped. Let them, not out of sincerity, but out of precision. Let them think they are admired. Let them believe you are too weak, too impressed, too loyal to ever become a threat. The Stoics never wasted energy fighting those who were already destroying themselves. They conserved effort, observed patterns, and intervened only when the moment was right. That is your role here, not to resist, but to allow. You're not feeding the ego to honor it. You're feeding it to expose it. Don't interrupt their fantasies. Expand them. Don't correct their lies. Let them weave more. The narcissist is not building truth. They are stacking illusion. And the higher they build, the more unstable it becomes. You don't need to push. They'll stumble. You just need to ensure you're not in their way when they fall. Watch carefully. Watch how much more they reveal when they believe they are adored. Watch how careless they become when they assume you are harmless. They will start to gloat, to overshare, to speak truths they once guarded with venom. They will speak of how they manipulate others, how they twist perception, how they've outwitted those before you, and in their arrogance, they'll forget you're listening. But you are, not to admire, to document. You gather not rage, but data, not vengeance, but leverage. You are not looking for justice. You are creating it, moment by moment, without a word. While they broadcast their greatness, you become the quiet historian of their downfall. This is not cruelty. This is wisdom, applied in silence. Seneca once said, "He who is prepared for all events has already conquered them." When you feed the ego of a narcissist, you are not playing their game, you are preparing your advantage. Because the greatest exposure comes not through confrontation, but through comfort. When they think you're no threat, they relax. And when they relax, they reveal. That's where the trap begins to close. Not with noise, but with knowledge. You don't need to confront them. You don't even need to contradict them. Just let them overstep. Let them take credit they haven't earned. Let them speak too loudly, lie too boldly, brag in the wrong company. Because eventually, truth surfaces, not because you dragged it out, but because they paraded it unguarded. Understand this clearly. You are not their friend. You are not their enemy. You are their reflection, a surface that shows them what they are without telling them what you see, and that terrifies them more than any insult ever could, because once they sense no threat, they stop hiding, and when they stop hiding, they stop controlling. This is the Machiavellian art the Stoics would have respected, not reactive, not explosive, but precise. You disarm the tyrant not by matching their energy, but by drawing them into a space where their own actions betray them. And once they've handed you every truth, every tactic, every tool, they call it trust. You call it preparation. Let them believe you belong to them. Let them believe you're devoted, blind, easy to mold. That illusion makes them reckless, and every ounce of recklessness becomes evidence, becomes a key, becomes leverage. You are not seeking their destruction. You are stepping aside while they initiate it themselves. And when the moment comes, when you've seen all there is to see, when the facade is transparent, and the truth is undeniable, you don't shout. You don't expose. You walk away, not with chaos, but with clarity. And that, to the narcissist, is the final blow, because nothing enrages them more than losing control over someone they thought they owned. They will call you a traitor. They will accuse you of changing. But you haven't changed. You've awakened. You saw the pattern. You stayed silent. You endured. And now, you detach not in anger, but in triumph, because while they were performing, you were preparing. While they were inflating, you were observing. And now, without ever striking first, you've delivered the final move. The trap was never yours to set. It was theirs. You simply allowed them to walk into it, one boast, one lie, one careless admission at a time. And when they collapse, they will look for someone to blame. But all they'll find is a mirror. That is the Stoic way. That is the Machiavellian way. And that is how you win without raising your voice, without lowering your character, and without ever needing to break what pride will eventually shatter. Law 4. Reclaim the narrative. The greatest illusion the narcissist clings to is the belief that they are in control of the story, of perception, of the people around them. They script conversations like a playwright addicted to applause, spinning every word to keep you within their theater. In their mind, they are always the misunderstood hero or the wounded victim, and everyone else is just a prop. But the Stoic strategist knows you don't win by tearing down their stage. You win by rewriting the story they think they own quietly, precisely, without announcement. You don't confront a narcissist head-on. That only feeds their sense of importance. What you do instead is observe. You study their patterns, not to correct them, but to understand the architecture of their illusion. How do they twist facts? Where do they deflect blame? What roles do they cast others into so they can stay center stage? A narcissist depends on a carefully crafted image, but once you understand the shape of that mask, you can start loosening it thread by thread. Let them keep believing they've fooled you. Let them bask in the comfort of their self-crafted mythology. Meanwhile, in the silence of your awareness, you begin a different process. You start asking questions, subtle ones, but well-placed. You challenge nothing directly, but you let the contradiction sit there long enough for others to notice. A calm inquiry here, a raised eyebrow there, a moment of deliberate silence when everyone else is clapping. These are your tools, not rage, not revenge, but the slow precision of doubt, because perception, not reality, is where the narcissist holds sway, and the moment others begin to see the cracks, their power begins to unravel. You don't need to argue with them. You don't need to expose them. All you need is to be the steady presence that refuses to play the role they wrote for you. And when the story begins to shift, when people around them begin to pause, to question, to observe, it is not you who has spoken. It is their own inconsistency that has finally caught the light. This is not about sabotage. It is about clarity, Stoic clarity. You're not here to punish anyone, you're here to restore your own sight. And in the process, you become the one shaping the narrative, not by shouting, not by proving, but by being the only one in the room who isn't performing. Let them lie where others are listening. Let them humiliate others while thinking they are winning. You say nothing, but you watch everything. And in time, the crowd begins to shift, not in an explosion, but in whispers. Doubt is contagious when it is quiet. And when people begin to pull away, when their once blind followers begin to hesitate, the narcissist senses it. They can feel the temperature drop. but they can't quite tell where it's coming from. That's when desperation begins. They'll accuse you of betrayal. They'll say you've turned others against them, but you haven't spoken a word. You've simply stopped defending the illusion. And that's what truly breaks them. Not slander, not resistance, but indifference, the loss of influence, the realization that their words no longer command obedience. Do not fear their attempts to smear you. Let them talk. Their narrative is no longer the only one in circulation. The seeds you planted with quiet precision have begun to bloom, and no matter how loudly they scream, no matter how many times they rewrite the script, you are now the one directing where the light falls. They react. You remain still. They spin. You let the truth sit unpolished, untouched, and all the more powerful for it. Understand this. You do not need the world to turn against them. You only need the illusion to stop working. And that begins when you stop participating, when you stop justifying, when you stop trying to fix or expose or explain. You step back, and you let gravity do what pride always makes inevitable. This is the Machiavellian elegance the Stoics understood: quiet power, anchored action, calculated withdrawal. You don't need to take credit for their fall. That's their story to unravel. All you've done is refuse to carry it anymore. And in that refusal, the mask slips. The story loses its grip. The crowd turns. And the narcissist, once so skilled at scripting your role, finds themselves alone on stage, shouting lines no one believes. That is the art of narrative inversion. That is how you win without a fight, without a spectacle, and without becoming the thing you're escaping from. It is not about destroying someone. It is about no longer needing to protect their illusion at the cost of your own clarity. The Stoic does not seek applause or vengeance, only truth, only peace. And when you begin to live in truth, their fiction cannot hold you. Let the story collapse. Let the curtain fall. Walk away with no need to explain, because when your silence has more power than their performance, the show is already over. That is the Stoic path. That is the Machiavellian method. And that is how you rewrite the narrative without raising your voice, without breaking your character, and without losing your soul. And here's the beauty they never see coming. Their noise reveals them. Your silence reveals the truth. You don't expose them, they do it themselves. Stay composed, stay unreadable, and watch the story turn in your favor. Comment, own the frame, subscribe for what's next, and keep rising calmly without needing applause.